environmental coordination, it is my privilege to extend a very warm welcome to our guests and to our esteemed panelists. We have gathered here to delve into the transformative potential of nature-based solutions in addressing the challenges posed by climate change. As we navigate through the discourse on NBS, let us expand our focus beyond its role in mitigation and underscore its equally significant contribution to adaptation. We have two of the speakers who've already joined us on stage. I would like to request Angelina Andrade, Chair, IUCN Commission on Ecosystem Management, to please join us on stage, and Dr. Aline Sottironi, Research Fellow, Nature-Based Solutions Initiative from the Oxford University. Thank you, panelists, for joining us. I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to Dr. Jahazeb Khan, Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission of Pakistan and also Chairman, Board of Directors, NDRMF. Dr. Jahazeb Khan, it is my pleasure and honor to please invite you on stage to deliver the keynote. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, and very distinguished panelists and participants. Good morning. All has been said, so I think I would not repeat in the presence of such distinguished panelists, but the theme is very important. Talks about balancing human activities with development, and we've got a long series of time behind us in history to see how development has affected nature and has affected humans. There's a lot to learn there. And my personal sense is that any development which alters nature is not a development which would last and is beneficial to the not only human society but to all beings on this planet. So, I think that's a lesson that all of us have seen, learned, perhaps, and some are now trying to practice it in a manner which is different. Anything which is closer to nature is good for us. I think in our personal lives, there's plenty of evidence for healthcare, for well-being, for wellness. All these terms define a certain concept behind the aspirations that human beings have and the aspiration that other living beings have on our partners in life in this planet. So that overlay, I think, of what we in Pakistan have experienced in the recent past is a very vivid manifestation of devastation that it can bring. The changes which people were talking about since some decades now, we have seen the damage it can cause to ordinary people, to their lives, to their property, to their well-being, and to their aspirations. So the urgency is there, particularly for countries like Pakistan, which are unfortunately in the line of this catastrophe. We are one of the 10 most vulnerable countries, no fault of ours, but geographical location perhaps, and certain other factors. We are trying to do is to learn lessons, not to repeat the mistakes that have been made. I'll just give you one example. Till about 5 years back, we had hardly any coal-fired power plants, none, and we were very squeezed for energy. We didn't have energy. Sometimes load shedding was people were without electricity for 16 to 18 hours in some parts of the country, villages, distant habitations. And we didn't have any other choice. We did go for some coal-fired power plant. And then we ask ourselves also, why did we not do this for 70 years? I think there were sensible people who thought that Pakistan could do better with hydropower, with gas-fired power plants, perhaps some furnace oil also, which has relatively less emissions. So So sometimes these compulsions dictate those decisions that countries like Pakistan have to adopt. But more and more natural solutions are available. Our villages used to be always energized by biomass, perhaps in a raw form, but can be made more efficient. Likewise, our cities were energized by a lot of hydropower, as I mentioned to you. So energy conservation is picking up, and so is efficiency, and also the understanding that we are part of a global community and we have to work together. So we'll do our bit in terms of we can't do a lot of mitigation, but adaptation certainly we have to. But whatever in mitigation as well, it's our commitment to the globe. We have given our nationally determined contributions. We're steadfast and we are trying to implement those. There might be capacity issues at some levels, but those are part of the story. I'd like to thank our government partners. They have been working with us, particularly FCDO. We run up to COP 27. There were a lot of activities in Islamabad. Dr. Christian Turner, himself a climate enthusiast, galvanized a lot of those activities. And in the run up to this COP, also, I think the FCDO has done some very good work. I'd like to thank the National Disaster Risk Management Fund, the CEO and his team for organizing all these events. I know it's been tough bringing everybody together with limited resources, but they've done an excellent job. And the Ministry for Climate Change and the Secretary, his leadership, with our eminent experts, Dr. Ali Fakir is here, and likewise the other. Thank you for being here, Ahmad, and the rest of the panelists. Thank you very much for this morning and your leadership on these issues. We are committed and we are encouraged by your support and commitment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Janze, for reaffirming the importance of nature-based solutions. And I quote you, closer to nature is good for us, it is good for human well-being, and it's good for the planet. Thank you for saying that, and I couldn't agree with you more. Traditionally, conversations surrounding nature based solutions have primarily revolved around its effectiveness in reducing emissions, sequestering carbon, and enhancing ecosystem resilience. While these aspects are undoubtedly vital components of the climate change puzzle, we must not overlook the critical role that nature can play in adaptation efforts. I think it's time to break free from the confines of siloed approaches and recognize that nature based solutions are not just about mitigating climate change, but also about adapting to its impacting impacts. To talk about this, we have a stellar panel over here, people with diverse experiences. And the format that I'm going to use is to ask questions from each one of you. But as I do that, I would also like to request that you introduce yourself, not just the background or your academic qualifications, but who you are as people, why you do what you do, and what is it that you represent. So I will start with you, Dr. Aline Satironi. Based on your current state of knowledge and experience with nature based solutions, what are the opportunities and limitations of nature based solutions in climate change? And what are the critical challenges that you think stand in the way of greater adoption of nature based solutions? Over to you, please.
Thank you. Is it work? No? No? Sorry. No? It's working? Yeah? Yeah. Thank you so much.
Maybe
This? Yeah?
speak a little louder, maybe. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I think it's not work. It's
It's not
working. Yeah,
working now.
yeah, it's working now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sorry about that. So hi everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's such an honor for me to be here in such a distinguished panel. I'm Aline Soterroni. I'm a research fellow in Oxford University, working on nature-based solutions initiative and based in the Department of Biology. I'm a mathematician by background, but I found a way to incorporate nature in my life. So I'm a mathematician in the biology department because nature is essential in everything we do. Um, Talking about opportunities and challenges, I would like to start my talk highlighting the synergies between climate and biodiversity crisis. So NBS involves actions of protection, restoration, sustainable management of ecosystems to address our societal challenges like climate change, biodiversity loss, whilst providing benefits for people and nature. And these benefits, they go beyond carbon. It goes beyond emissions reductions, and it also includes adaptation and resilience against climate change. Examples of nature-based solutions include protection through avoiding deforestation, for example, agroforestry systems, mangrove restoration, and mangrove forests. They act as cost-effective natural coastal defenses against sea level rising, coastal inundation, and provides essential benefits that goes beyond mitigation. And to put in a very simple way, nature-based solutions mean having nature as our ally against the climate change impacts. The term is getting traction. We have now a multilaterally agreed definition adopted by the UN Environmental Assembly. Last year, we had nature-based solutions for the first time in the UNEF Triple C cover decision and also in the CBD decision text. And we know that fossil fuels is the big elephant in the room, is the major source of emissions. But we also have to remember that land use change is the second largest source of emissions. By land use change, we also have deforestation. And land use change and climate change, they work in synergies, and also they are the major drivers of biodiversity loss. So both crises, climate and biodiversity crisis, they share some of the same drivers and also some of the same solutions. And on the linkages between climate and biodiversity crisis, I'd like to highlight 3 points. So first, our best way to adapt and create resilience against climate change impact is through protection, restoration, sustainable management. Second, the extent to which nature can provide those benefits depend on limiting temperature to 1.5 degrees, which requires the phase out of full, fast, fair, and funded of all fossil fuels. And third, the energy transition we need has to happen in a way it doesn't harm nature. On the limitations and opportunities of NBS in addressing climate change, as I said, the term is gaining traction, but it needs to scale up. We also have an overemphasis on the planting trees or afforestation and monocultures with exotic species, and we have to have a wide range of ecosystems. The success of NPS projects, they also depend on the involvement of communities, local communities, indigenous peoples. NPS can reduce vulnerability of socio-ecological systems by reducing exposure to climate hazards, reducing sensitivity to adverse impacts, and building adaptive capacity. In terms of mitigation, global models, they estimate that nature-based solutions could reduce peak warming to zero point 0.1 from zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.3 degrees. Just to put this number in context, we are 1.2 degrees above pre-industrial levels and fighting to have to limit temperature to 1.5. So we are 1.2 and fighting for 1.5. And nature-based solutions can contribute to zero point 0.3. So it is significant. But there is a limit on the mitigation potential of nature-based solutions. But if well implemented and carefully implemented, well designed, nature-based solutions can significantly contribute to the net zero pathway we need to achieve in order to keep 1.5 degree alive. Um, Another point I would like to bring is that nature-based solutions they are ready to be implemented, and they are less costly than negative emissions technologies like carbon capture and storage. But nature-based solutions should not, must not be used to delay fossil fuels phase out. And and yes, cannot be a distraction from the need to decarbonize energy systems. And what I'm trying to say here is that it's not that one comes first to the other. We need both. We need them in tandem and urgently. And to scale up nature-based solutions, we need integrated approaches. NBS should be embedded in policies with concrete targets, appropriate financial resources, compliant with social and environmental safeguards, and standards like the IUCN that Angela is going to talk very soon. And my final remarks, nature-based solutions, they offer an opportunity, a critical opportunity to address this twin crisis of climate and biodiversity uh, in a integrated and synergistic way. We need nature-based solutions holistically represented in the next cycle of NDCs to increase ambition on nature as well. And one way to get it is to have the recognition of nature-based solutions in the global stock take text. And last but not least, my final message, it's not all about carbon, it's not just carbon, and we need nature. Nature must be at the heart of our climate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saturoni. Taking the thread of the conversation forward on the note you ended, that societal challenges can only be solved through nature-based solutions, and using nature as an ally is absolutely essential. Let me take that conversation forward to IUCN, the custodians of nature. My question to you, Angela Andrade, is to share IUCN's experiences and best practices in applying nature-based solutions to national climate change strategies and development plans. What tools, mechanisms, frameworks do you think are required in countries like Pakistan to implement and monitor outcomes of nature-based actions?
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to join this important panel today. Well, my name is Angel Andrade. I'm from Colombia. I work for Conservation International, leading the uh, climate change and biodiversity policy, but I also chair the IUCN Commission on Ecosystem Management. And in this case, I will refer to my work with IUCN since for several years we have been working in the development of the IUCN concept and also the IUCN Global Standard on Nature-Based Solutions. So when we began the idea of working on nature-based solutions, we the first topic that we considered was to really understand the best examples that we had in areas like ecosystem-based adaptation, eco disaster risk reduction, in forest landscape restoration, and areas that were developed and implemented by IUCN since the 90s until now, but with one important topic to highlight that usually we were addressing ecological problems and social problems in a fragmented manner. So, in addition, most of the work of that we were developing was framed on the ecosystem approach that still is the provides the scientific and the main framework for nature-based solutions. But the big challenge was to really to address the social and ecological components in an integrated and synergistic manner. And especially because when the Sustainable Development Goals were agreed by UN, there were several challenges interconnected, not just climate change, adaptation and mitigation, biodiversity, but also food security, water security, human health, disasters. So we really thought that it was extremely relevant to develop a tool to help governments, to help organizations, to help project developers in addressing all these challenges in an integrated manner. So IUCN proposed a definition based on the principles that were adopted by all the initiatives that I mentioned previously that had published these principles, like, for example, the principles of the ecosystem approach, the principles of EBA, and others. And based on that, we discussed, we had consultation with IUCN members, and we identified the most relevant criteria that had to be considered if we want really to have a robust intervention that is really lasting, that can be adopted by communities, by governments. So I will refer to the main topics that we have considered, the 8 main elements of the MBS global standard that is being used, I have to say, in some countries, like, for example, my own country, Colombia, for policy. And there are also several examples all over the world in which the MBS standard is being applied to address specific actions in the field. So I will go through them. So the first critical point is to address societal challenges. Climate change is one, but we really encourage to address as much as possible several societal challenges simultaneously. And we will see later on why. But the main topic is because, well, we are competing for the same piece of land for different activities. So it's important to really address this topic in a synergistic manner. The second is refers that nature-based solutions is informed by scale. We can apply and we should apply nature-based solutions at different levels, but the lowest level, we need to go beyond the project. And so we always speak about interventions, not projects, because we really need to demonstrate impact at landscape level. Usually, when we have projects, we have the problem that what is happening in the upper stream, or what is happening downstream, or in areas that surround our project area may be affecting what the results of our activities in our own area. So this is why we really need to include the landscape approach, and this is also another important criteria. The third criteria is about demonstrating biodiversity net gain. That means that we have the possibility to say, well, this was the land when we began our intervention, and this is what we have now, and this is how we can measure the net gain in biodiversity. But more important, ecosystem integrity. Ecosystem integrity is the best way to assess the status of the ecosystems. So we know that after 1.5 degree, we will be navigating in a different world, let's say, and so we are really aiming to keep the integrity of the ecosystems, and this is an important criteria that is usually addressed following another IUCN standard, that is the Red List of Ecosystems. The fourth criteria is about the economic viability of nature-based solutions. We are aiming always to incorporate different ways of promoting and guaranteeing that the communities get um, gains or economic revenues from the interventions, because otherwise, if we cannot do that, it will be very difficult to engage governments and people on MBS. Then we have the importance of always promoting inclusive and transparent and empowering governance responses at different levels. What we do at the local level, if it's not connected with a subnational level or a national level may be affecting the duration of the intervention. Another point is related to the first one, that is about identifying and balancing trade-offs. So as I said, we are all competing for the same piece of land. So you have agriculture, you have interest in producing biofuels, for example, you have conserved areas, you have a high demand for new minerals for the transition. So we are all competing for the same piece of land. And so the message here is that together with all the relevant stakeholders, we need to identify these potential trade-offs and balance them and agree on them and in a very transparent manner, because otherwise there will be sectors of the community or sectors of society, private sector, that may not be supportive in the long term. Another point is adaptive management. This is a process. This is learning by doing. So we don't have a recipe, sorry, for our work. We are learning from our own experience and based on this set of criteria and indicators. And last but not least, we have the need to mainstream the nature-based solutions. We have to go beyond the conservation community, and we have to really involve the nature-based solutions approach to all the sectors and to promote sustainability and to deliver directly on policy and planning. So this is why, for example, initiatives, as you mentioned in your question, we have initiatives that are promoting the implementation of nature-based solutions in policy. So the best way is really to influence the national policy strategies, but locally the land use plans of municipalities or states, it's extremely important, and this is also an important connection with the spatial planning um, target that we have adopted in the global biodiversity framework. And so I think this is extremely relevant. And of course, the more we have initiatives that are using the standard to assess the performance of the implementation of MBS based on the IUCN Global Standard, it will give us a way to improve what we have already at this point. The standard was developed based on the best available science and practice, but every time every 4 years, we are open for inputs, if there are, for new ideas to be incorporated, and make sure that the IUCN Global Standard really responds to the demands and the critical challenges that we are addressing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela Andrade. Did you have a presentation,
Yeah,
PowerPoint?
well, it's there for, includes what I said.
All right.
So I
Okay.
think you can share it.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for highlighting that ecological problems are social problems and addressing them in tandem is absolutely essential. That intersectionality, I think, is both important to highlight and relevant to apply. But before I ask Alicia Forsyth to speak, I think it's becoming increasingly evident to me from the conversation that finance is going to play a very important role in all of this. So may I request the CEO of NDRMF, Bilal Anwar, to join us on stage, because we have to hear what finance and the role of finance has to do in nature-based solutions. Welcome to the conversation. Alicia Forsyth, for you, I'd like to know what are the UK priorities on leveraging nature for climate resilience and sustainable development? And also, what are the FCDO's current and future programs to support nature programs in Pakistan?
Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed. And good morning, everybody. My name is Alicia Forsyth, and I'm Head of Climate Strategy and Coordination at the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. It's great to be here with such distinguished guests and on such a great panel on this wonderful day celebrating nature. So, you know, for the UK, we very much see nature as key to tackling climate change. These issues are closely related. If you can, when we have biodiversity loss, that will accelerate climate change, and climate change accelerates biodiversity loss. You go into a negative cycle. But if we can preserve and halt and reverse biodiversity loss, then we get into a much a better space. So we are really keen that nature is thought about as an integral part of tackling climate change. That's why we put it very much at the heart of our COP26 presidency. And we're really, we've already started to talk about it. We're really clear that nature-based solutions are there to build resilience, to build adaptation to climate change. And yet, and we're starting to get to this, nature-based solutions receive a tiny percentage of climate finance and climate finance flows. So there's an issue there. For the UK, we remain completely committed to our £11.6 billion commitment to international climate finance, of which 3 billion will be for nature. And we are looking, as our Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced last year, that we will be tripling our adaptation funding from £0.5 billion in 2019 to £1.5 billion in 2025. In terms of what we're doing in Pakistan, we were talking about it when I first arrived. We very much see this as a partnership and a space to be working together. We were really, absolutely thrilled that Pakistan is part of the FCLP, and I know that there's been a sort of look at this key priority around forest fires, with the UK looking to help Pakistan develop early warning systems to prevent forest fires in Pakistan. I know that we're also looking to invest to help communities who are repeatedly hit by disasters, to help them better protect themselves and improve water use in communities which are particularly vulnerable to flooding. And I'm deeply conscious this is a massive issue within Pakistan. And obviously within that, nature-based solutions are a key part of how we think about that, how we think about communities' resilience to disasters, how we think about how communities do water management when they are when they are so vulnerable to flooding. I also know that the UK is looking to put climate finance to raise climate finance for nature-based solutions, to really get the finance flowing. So I know that we've got the Climate Investment Fund for Pakistan, which is very much aimed at mobilising private finance to support and deliver Pakistan's NDC and Pakistan's National Adaptation Plan. This is a key part of our partnership with Pakistan, and we're really proud to be part of that. Stop there.
Thank you very much, Alicia. I think everyone here would agree with you that nature is key to saving the planet. It's an integral part of all the actions that we're taking, and it's at the heart of the conversation. So this takes me to biodiversity conservation and WWF. And we are indeed very fortunate to have with us Hamad Naki, who has been working in this sector for the longest of time, and dedication and commitment, I think, is his motto. Hamad, what I'd like to know from you is, what have been WWF and your personal experiences in implementing nature-based solutions in Pakistan? Because I know you face several challenges. And what are the capacities that are required to prepare bankable NBS projects?
Okay. Thank you very much, Aisha, for the nice introduction. Assalamu alaikum and very good morning, everyone. So I'm Hamad Naki, Director General WWF. I've been with WWF for 27 years and leading the Pakistan office for the last 10 years. My background, I have an engineering background in water and environmental management, but as an engineer, I strongly feel that nature-based solutions, if not more, are equally important, like the engineering solutions. To be honest, this concept, like in many other countries, was very new. And I can proudly say that WWF was the first organization, to literally promote and launch nature-based solution activities or projects. We started like planning after the 2010 floods, where we felt that along with engineering solutions, there has to be, nature-based solutions. Our primary focus was on watershed management. We picked few areas in particularly in KP, and then based on that project, we started working on an green climate fund project to manage the flood risk. And that was the point that the flood protection plan 4 was also being developed. And I think this was for the first time with the collaboration of the Federal Flood Commission that nature-based solutions were included in the flood protection plan 4 of the country, which was, to be honest, a great thing. Now, coming back to our work, so based on the work that we were doing in KP, we designed a project, and I think my gratitude and to FCDO to realize the importance, and as part of their commitment of water resources accountability in Pakistan program, they approved a project for KP and Gilgit-Baltistan. Again, the major focus was on to make the communities more resilient, to improve the livelihoods, because these were the communities who were most vulnerable if you look at the climate crisis being faced in the country. Uh, just to share with you few interventions. As part of this program, we are trying to, improve the natural drainage pathways, and these are these are the common things. These are not highly high-tech scientific things. We are trying to improve slope stabilization of these mountainous areas through bioengineering. So bioengineering, includes gabion structures, earthen protection bunds, and then check dams, also improving the irrigation channels in that particular area. I think another component is where we are also trying to revive and protect some of the natural springs. So these are the interventions, I feel they are cost effective, they are simple, they are easy to maintain by the communities. The problem in many developing countries is that initially it was not part of your planning and development agenda. Secondly, a lot of politicians they want great infrastructures. They want to cut the ribbon. They want to show their voters that, okay, look at this great development project that we have delivered for you. So that's where uh, I won't use the word conflict, but that's the struggle. That's the ongoing challenge, that an organization like WWF face. I think my colleague from IUCN mentioned that it's very important to make it part of the national policy framework, because that would give an advantage and facilitate the process where other civil society organizations also take this agenda forward. And I think I gave the example of Flood Protection Plan 4, but I know through the projects funded by the World Bank and ADB, nature-based solutions are now. Now, coming to your second question was bankable. Now, this is a term, and yesterday, if you remember, there was a discussion that the climate finance should not be locked. It should be accessible to the vulnerable developing countries. So that's like one part or one side of the picture. The other side is the donor community wants the projects to be efficient, to be impactful, to be transparent, and they really want, the funds that they give are fully spent on on the work. So that's where you have to at least, maybe I won't use the word locked, but you have to follow a certain system, a certain templates, where you also at least try to convince your donor community that the project will be implemented in its true spirit and it won't be spent on something else. So it's not about locking or unlocking. I agree that the process at the moment is quite hectic and cumbersome. But look, last point, I think we also need to ensure, as a country who talks about this and genuinely talks about it, that our own system, our own processes are do they facilitate this thing? Why the space for the civil society organizations to operate in many developing countries is shrinking? Why there are so many NOCs and approvals? Why does it take months and months to get endorsement and approvals from the relevant government departments? If we are, vulnerable country, we have to access, then you need to facilitate the accredited entities so that they can also access those funds. The funds are there, but we need facilitation from within the countries and from our external donor community. I think in the absence of one, the struggle will continue and the struggle will be real. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamad. You have highlighted that finance has to be scalable, affordable, and accessible. And I think you've also pointed out that the conversation is not about locking finance, it's about systems, transparency, and accountability. So that brings us to Bilal Anwar. The key to unlocking all the doors is finance. So, Bilal, what I'd like to hear from you is what steps can countries like Pakistan take to drive the integration of nature-based solutions to scale them and make them investment ready? And also, my second question to you would be, what are the enabling environments needed for that scale up and to bring the private sector investment into this conversation?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Aisha. And colleague Hamad have already set the stage in terms of the finance and the kind of challenges which countries like Pakistan, and Pakistan is not kind of a uniquely positioned in that sense. Many countries in other regions, especially Africa and the small island developing states, are also grappling with a very similar kind of challenges as well. I think let me start off a kind of a slightly theoretical or a philosophical way of this question. I think the bigger challenge is, or kind of intellectual and methodological gap, is when it comes to adaptation finance and or it comes to the nature-based solution finance, that it is almost impossible to kind of attach any economic value or the economic benefit in the returns or the benefits which any adaptation intervention or a nature-based solution can actually bring into it. That methodological gap has been there, has been widely recognized by the intellectual community, but it hasn't been addressed. And that's one of the reasons that not only the public finance actually becoming increasingly difficult to be spent or to be kind of allocated for all the nature-based solution or adaptation in general. So being an economist myself, actually, I always wonder as well that why the economic benefits when to adaptation or for forestation or reforestation and all the communities which take benefit out of it hasn't been done that kind of a work, and a very precise, or to the extent possible precise, economic values has not been attached to it. Because what is happening, I mean, one of the prime reasons that most of the international climate finance has been flowing towards mitigation, especially when we're talking about the private capital, because there is a product, there is a service which is attached at the end of the pipeline, and that service actually attracts investments. Because when we're talking about investment, by nature, we need to have some kind of returns attached to it. And it becomes increasingly difficult to have the returns from most of the adaptation interventions, and it becomes even more difficult for nature-based solutions in that sense. So I think that need to be addressed at the intellectual level, at the research communities. Aline is here with the Oxford University. I think that's a very good PhD topic for a number of students who should actually take it forward. And that have to kind of trickle down to the policy formulation level as well within the UN context, the UNFCCC process, and others as well. Now, I am so that I think is a challenge when it comes to the attracting the financing for countries like Pakistan. more at the domestic level. Hamad have already mentioned the kind of sometimes the institutional and the structural issues. At the same time, almost all the financing for climate change, it is a project-based financing. It is moving very slowly and gradually towards more policy-oriented or more programmatic type of interventions, but we still at a very, very early stage of it. Now, when we are saying that it is project finance, so a project, a credible, implementable, and as you mentioned, and many others like to mention, a bankable project has to be there. Now, any nature-based solution project or any adaptation project by nature, by far, is not bankable as per the classical determinants of bankability. Talking about return on investment, talking about the financial sustainability, a number of other parameters become very, very difficult to do so. In Pakistan, in addition to that, we have a lot of potential because we are a vulnerable country, and being our location, our geographical location, as well as the natural capital we have, especially when we're talking about our glaciers, our forests, a number of other ecosystem we have. So there is a potential there, and that potential need to be preserved and need to be protected. So this is something what we're talking about. Forestry becomes a slightly more kind of easier because of its sinks nature and the carbon it actually captures and holds down to it. At the same time, we know that the deforestation which has been happening. So the potential is there, but I think the attached problem is the capacity constraints, which Pakistan actually suffer, and many countries actually suffer because of the complexity which is involved there. In NDRMF, we've been actually taking all the interventions and trying to balance the structural interventions along with the nature-based solutions. Although all those projects and all those interventions are very, very small, but at the same time, I think what we have done, the kind of contribution it has done into that particular field, is the providing the kind of proof of concept that it can be done in a balanced and a combined manner. And I think those kind of initiatives have to be taken forward, and we have actually forwarded them to other stakeholders, other our partner organizations, as they have taken up that as well. I think the scalability is going to come by combining and aggregating all these small interventions, and that's what we in NDRMF, in support with other organizations, we are actually carrying it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Bilal. I think what caught my attention was that finance and philosophy don't go hand in hand, but you've made some very cogent points to link money with intellectual capacity to plan for long-term investments. With that, we almost come to the end of this session, but before we do that, I would like our panelists to share some priority actions, short, medium, long-term, brief 2-minute statements, starting with you, Dr. Satural. I will open the floor for Q&A after they make their statements. Yes, thank you.
So short and term. Yeah, it's super important to align our actions and implementation with long-term strategies. We have to keep in mind we need to keep 1.5, and it's also about net zero targets, net zero commitment. We have to reduce, and we have to keep that. But I in my research, I look at net zero pathways, particularly for Brazil, not for Pakistan, but it's almost the same. Uh, the message is that there are several ways to get to net zero, different pathways, different routes. But the more nature we put in this pathway, and especially from global south countries, better it will be better for the adaptation and resilience. And countries like Brazil, agriculture really relies on ecosystem services. We also have people like in the Amazon. We are seeing this year the extreme drought affecting the livelihoods of several people. The best way to adapt to these uncertain times and extreme events is with nature, hands in hands with nature. So we need governments, policies, and this long-term strategy. These policies, they need to be designed now to keep this alignment between short and long term. We also need the private sector to understand the risks and that the health ecosystems are strategic, and we need the financial sector to change their mindset. I think these three points,
Thank you.
policy, financial, and private sector together.
Thank you. Angela Andrade.
Thank you. Well, I would say, and based on the criteria that I presented, the criteria come with a set of indicators. So it's an invitation to for the implementation of this framework of the standard, because the idea of the IUCN global standard is to support governments, national governments, local governments, regional governments, different sectors, also to support the private sector. We are really interested in having companies and private organizations using the standard. Same with multilateral projects coming specifically under different windows from for adaptation, mitigation, biodiversity conservation. uh, we also encourage the establishment of communities of practice. That's something that could be useful in their country. For example, bringing together scientists, practitioners, and having permanent dialogues on what went well and what has to be improved. So opening the dialogue also with communities is essential. And the connection with policies that I already mentioned, and not and keep in mind always that nature-based solutions are for people and for people resilience and for uh, maintaining ecosystem integrity.
Thank you very much. Alicia Forsyth, please.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So I would say my three main reflections is, first of all, there has to be political ownership of protecting nature and biodiversity. So that would be my first key takeaway. I think the second one is that conservation is better than restoration, which is more cost effective. Obviously, restoration is better than nothing, and there are stories, and we look around the world and see stories where there has been restoration of biodiversity, but obviously conservation is better to begin with. And then I think the third main thing I'd say, and we've sort of touched on it, quite a few speakers have touched on it, about how do we mainstream nature-based solutions in wider policies, wider solutions. It's how do you think about what is the policy here, what is the answer here, and how is nature-based solutions part of that? And that should just be a sort of a rule of thumb thinking about how we do this. So I think those would be my three things: political ownership, conservation, and how do we think about it as part of wider policy.
Ahmad.
Yeah, I mean, a lot has been said, but quickly, I mean, the climate crisis is huge. So it should be clear that no like single department, government, organization can literally address that. So that's where the collaboration is the key. And look at this platform, this panel: academic research, civil society, donors, planning commission, and a national fund. That's the collaboration which should be seen at the national level. And that's where I always say it has to be together if you really want to address that.
Yeah, I think a disconnect has to happen between the development and a very construction-based development and the gray structure, and bringing nature more into the development. I think the development has become synonymous like construction and the gray structures and the roads and these kind of actions. Um, in Pakistan, actually, Chairman Saab is sitting here, and we have a very unique opportunity that the after a gap, our 5-year plan is in preparation. There might be a very good opportunity that we bring nature into our 5-year planning process. And I think with this, we can actually set the ball rolling, which has been missing for quite some time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I thank all our esteemed panelists. It was a very stimulating conversation, and I think all of you made some very, very potent and insightful perspectives that were shared with the audience. I will now open the floor and go to the back first to the gentleman. Please identify yourself, and if you have a particular speaker that you want to address your question to, please address it to. Uh, can you have the mic?
Reality is that 90% of the flood effects of last year is not been compensated yet. Not because of Pakistani government, because the promises made to Pakistan is not fulfilled. 10 billion were promised, loss and damage. Not a single penny has arrived. Debt has increased instead of going down. So last year there was a lot of synthetic weight at Sharm el Sheikh. I was there as well, and we see that everyone was talking about about rehabilitation, helping Pakistan, because 33 million people were impacted because of torrential rains and these floods. And this was nothing. This was not a crime we committed. This was a crime committed by the rich countries, and we paid the price for a crime which we have not committed. And this is what happened, that still people are waiting on the roads. There are a lot of things to be done, and we are demonstrating here, we are calling here, pay up now, and pay for the just transition, free and fair and democratic transition on the climate justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment, Mr. Ali Fakir. I think the mic is right behind you.
Thank you. My question is to Alicia. I wanted to probe your thinking on the linkages between nature-based solutions and loss and damage. The policymakers are very apprehensive that the fund, loss and damage fund, is not necessarily getting new and additional finances, and it has already begun to nibble from the other finances for adaptation or mitigation. So I want to give your personal thinking, or maybe your government's thinking, how loss and damage and nature-based solutions are linked, whether or not nature-based solutions can be supported, you think, from the loss and damage window, or do we need to create special window in adaptation fund, mitigation fund, as well as in loss and damage to support nature-based approaches? Thank you.
I'm just thinking about how to address that question. So, I mean, obviously, loss and damage was put on the agenda at COP26. We had sort of the movement forward at COP27, and here in UAE, we have adopted the recommendations of the Transition Council. And that feels like we are making progress on this issue that we really recognise is a key issue, and we have seen many pledges to this fund, including the UK pledging up to 60 million pounds. So I mean, I feel that we have made a lot of progress in this space. The UK continues to be committed to spending £11.6 billion on international climate finance by 2026. And within that, we have committed, as I said, we've committed £3 billion for nature, and we have committed to increase our adaptation funding from 0.5 billion in 2019 to 1.5 billion in 2025. And that commitment to be spending 1.5 billion in 2025 on adaptation continues. And this is, we recognise that it is a key part of what we need to be doing. And in terms of, we published 2-3 weeks ago, I'm losing track of time, but we published our white paper about development. And within that, we very much talked about how we see climate resilient development as a key part of our development offer going forwards. So I would very much say that this is very much the space that we are looking to as we think about development going forwards. We are thinking about resilient development, we're thinking about adaptation, and the 1.5 billion in 2025 is a key part of that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Zegma Abbas, and I work for Asian People's Movement on Data and Development. I'm also a doctoral candidate in environmental anthropology. My question is to Hamad Naqi Sahab, and I wanted to gather some of your thoughts on some of the conservation programs that you have implemented in Gilgit-Baltistan. Now, I come from Gilgit-Baltistan, especially from the area where when Prime Minister Imran Khan announced Himalaya and Nanga Parbat National Park in Pakistan in 2020. When this announcement was made, there was a widespread protest from the local communities in Astor and the Diamir region because that was the area where the conservation program was going to be implemented. Their main reason of protest was that their experience with Deosai National Park was not very good because they think that their ecological sovereignty has been stripped and the communities are not allowed to exercise their communal rights of free grazing in national parks. So my question to you is that and of course you work alongside the government as well, when these conservation programs are implemented, especially in an area where 90% of the livelihood is pastoral for the people, how far you take into account the indigenous knowledge and the indigenous wisdom of conservation into your policies? Because what I see as a doctoral candidate in conservation is that there's a widespread gap between indigenous wisdom and indigenous knowledge and the techno-scientific
Okay,
things that we
I
come
think
up
you've
with.
made
Yeah.
your point. Let Hamad Naqi respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Zagam. Very important question. Look, I mean, if you look at the process which is clearly defined to be followed, you can never ignore the indigenous knowledge and the role of communities. When you declare a certain area as a national park and as a protected area, obviously you do it because of your international commitments. You have signed Convention on Biological Diversity or some other uh, international multilateral environmental agreement, and you have to do certain actions on ground in the country. Now, the first key element is developing a management plan for that particular area. So whether it's Desai National Park, whether it's Parambar National Park, all those protected. The problem in Pakistan, let's be honest, are two, quite a few others, but related to this. In many cases, the indigenous communities are not involved in the manner that they should involve. That's number one, and I'll give you a couple of examples. The second is where okay, I forgot it. What was the second? Um, yeah, the second is where a lot of these protected areas are protected on paper. So we call them the paper parks, where you go and the boundaries are not defined, the do's and don'ts are not clearly defined. Now the grazing rights, and particularly where the Shamlat area or the communal forest, uh, I think that's critically important. And that's where the human wildlife conflict also occurs. Because it's traditionally and historically, these communities have been living with leopards, with markhors, with ibex, Marco Polo sheep, and they were the custodian of that wildlife. But then there were vested interests, the intruder, the people who, because of poverty, they also engage some of the local communities, and we know that, and they become also a partner. But there were two projects: the Mountain Area Conservation Project and the PAM, the Protected Area Management Program, where the communities were involved, the communities organized, the community. Take the example of trophy hunting. um, $10,000. It goes this time. It goes. I think it went to $150,000. $840,000. 80% goes to the community. 20% has to be spent on the needs of the community, but not So there's a model. There are models which are working, and the role of communities is critical. The problem arises when there's a stroke of pen. You change the boundaries. Where with the stroke of pen, you say that we need this much area for a certain purpose, and then neither the community nor the civil society is involved. So that's where I think the problem is, and that's happening in Deosai National Park. That's happening in your area in Karambar, in a lot of other places. So that's the challenge, and that's the challenge where the community and the civil society need to continue their struggle and work together.
Thank you very much. My takeaway in the concept of deep ecology, man and nature interact and constantly modify each other. From today's conversation, it's very clear to me that in order for both of them to thrive in tandem, maintaining balance and harmony is going to be extremely important in all our intersections. To conclude this session, I would now like to invite Dr. Jahanzeb Khan to please come to the podium and give the closing remarks. Thank you so much to everyone.
I think all I can say is all is said and done. The very esteemed panel, very eminent. Thank you for your contributions. It reassures us that the global community worries about such an important phenomenon which affects us greatly, as I said earlier. We'll just make 2 points, and these are drawn from your discussions. I think the first point is to look at how we can revisit and redesign the way we are developing and we are progressing, both in countries which have developed as well as those which are still developing. The existing model of development has had many setbacks, and we know that, so that as we move forward, we try to avoid those setbacks. Otherwise, what we see in so many countries is that they're following the path which is already known. We see more of urbanization, we see more of utilization of natural resources which are not replenishable. And the model of development has not changed to make it more sustainable. And I think that's the major lesson that I draw from here. It's not about projects, these are very important projects. A lot of good work done with communities, with local needs. But to go on a scale, the development model has to be redesigned. I think that's point one. Point two is about how to bring it closer to nature. And a lot of good discussion has taken place. I think it's also common sense when the planet got established, people are living here, and so are the species. I don't think they were ever meant to have artificial systems sustain them. Nature was sustaining by itself. And human beings, as animals, have healing properties, and in medicine, we notice that the emphasis is shifting from curative side to more preventive side to take care of the human body in a manner that it runs its natural course in a better manner. And I think that a lot of people are adapting to that kind of lifestyle where they're trying to heal from within and trying to lead a more meaningful life by not external props but by building up their own reserves. And I think that's very important because that's how nature designed itself. Perhaps along the line we have changed a few things which need to be now corrected. So the question on the uh, side of being closer to nature and not disturbing it to find our new needs is how to take it again to scale. The new buildings which are required, new highways, a new kind of habitations. All of those need to be again redesigned to make sure that they use more and more natural solutions. It's again common sense that we've seen that buildings are designed which do not have light, so we have to artificially lit them. They don't have the kind of ventilation that maybe communities knew 500 years back or 1,000 years living in very cold environment. They knew how to keep themselves warm. And we've strayed from that path. So not only at the local level, but at the level of regions, nations, and international level also, how to share this technology, which makes people comfortable. They can participate in their well-being and prosperity without exploiting nature as much as we've done in the last couple of centuries. I think those are extremely important lessons. Um, Thank you very much for this very enlightening session, and I'm sure with your support, we'll continue this dialogue and also lead to action. We in the Planning Commission are more concerned with what happens on a daily basis as well. So from our perspective, this is very important because we are right now, as was mentioned, designing the next 5-year plan for the country. And these considerations must be a central part of the plan so that we are conscious of what could be achieved in this time span. I'll conclude by saying, and I think Ali Toki mentioned this, about the connection between the loss and damage and the natural solutions that we're talking about. I think if you can link up this as an incentive structure, that the quick disbursement of loss and damages should also incentivize communities and countries to find newer solutions. And we also share the technology. I think that would be a very good beginning for everybody. Thank you once again.